You're listening to Finding My Own Weird, where we'll follow yours truly on a journey to discover my own authentic weird self. I'm your host, Christine Lassiter. Joining me will be amazing guests who found their own formula and are living and thriving as their own wonderfully weird selves. So hold on tight, it's about to get weird.
My son Tyler was a really weird kid. And I mean this with all the love in the world. I mean, he's awesome in every way, but he was definitely weird. I worked at the daycare when he was 4, and I would watch all the other kids running around playing, and he was running around as well. But they didn't notice him. He thought he was playing with them, but to them, he was invisible. At 5, he was reading college geology books that somebody gave us. He became very interested in dinosaurs. Now, I know it's not unusual for little kids to enjoy dinosaurs, but we aren't talking about Barney or The Land Before Time. We're talking about knowing the period, the size, what they ate, how to spell all those dinosaur names. I didn't even know how to spell those names. And he didn't play with his dino toys. He studied them. I think it was his intelligence and near photographic memory that made it difficult for kids to relate to him. He would be telling them all these facts and they just couldn't connect. He would continue to stay invisible until about his 5th grade talent show. At the time, he was watching a lot of Brian Regan. Now, Brian was a cleaner comic, he made a lot of weird noises and was goofy. Tyler loved him. So for the talent show, Tyler decided to do a Brian Regan comedy routine called Stupid in School. He rehearsed and rehearsed over and over again for weeks. The day of the talent show, Tyler got on stage and he nailed it. And I don't say this as a mom because one of my faults is that I don't gush about my kids about things that aren't real. Don't ask me how he did in sports. He not only had every word right, but he put the most perfect inflection in. The students were roaring with laughter. The teachers had tears of laughter just streaming down their face. I had heard him do it 1,000 times at home, but in that moment, with him giving it all, it was like I'd heard it for the first time. It was hysterical. It was a score. From that day on, people knew who Tyler Clark was. The funny thing is, nothing had changed about him. He was still the really weird kid who knew way too much about way too much. But they saw him because he did something they could relate to. How many times have we dismissed or not seen someone because they were different, unusual, or weird? I think we're missing out on some of the coolest people and we don't even know it. By the way, Tyler's still weird. And he's still one of the coolest people I know. Love you, kiddo. Our next guest had their own time of being that smart, unusual one who lived a completely different life than their peers. Between busing to a different school for a gifted and talented program, taking swing dance classes in high school, and now hosting a women's pinball tournament, she is using all that weird to showcase some really awesome skills. Today, we're talking to Lexi Whittemore. Hi, Lexi. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Sure thing. I put out there that I'm looking for guests, and you reached out to me and you're like, hey, what about a competitive pinball player?
Is that weird enough for you?
That's got some potential. So yeah, we connected there, but one is not born as a competitive pinball player. There has to be a journey to get there. So let's talk about your journey. Where'd you grow up?
All right. I grew up in Spokane, Washington, which is just about 300 miles from here.
Mm-hmm.
Raised by my single mom. She had 4 kids. I was the second of her 4. We grew up pretty poor, but she did her best to make sure that we never wanted for anything. She made sure we went on all the school field trips, that kind of stuff. My mom's a pretty hardworking lady.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, growing up, I remember I think it was our 3rd grade, like standardized test. I scored in like a ridiculous percentile, like 98 percentile or something on the standardized test. And
Wow.
that qualified me for the gifted and talented program in an
Mm-hmm.
elementary school. And it was called Tessera, which I don't know where they came up with that name, but it's kind of fun to say. Oh, I'm a tester kid. I don't know. I was the only kid from my school that did it. Um, fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. So the way that they set up this gifted program is they would take the kids from their neighborhood schools and they'd put them on a bus and send them to another school once a week.
Oh, wow.
So I rode my bus alone until we got to the next school to pick up another kid. So that was kind of interesting. I was missing 20% of my regular schooling every week. I would go, I think fourth and fifth grade, it was every Friday. And then sixth grade, it moved to Thursdays for my class, my tester class.
Right.
And we'd just go and do whatever projects they wanted the gifted kids to do that year or whatever. It was really cool and fun. I met some really cool people. Some of them are like still really good friends, but it was really interesting because coming from a very poor school, I was the only kid that went, where some of these other schools that maybe made more money or had more of a more prominent PTA, they would have maybe 5 or 6 different kids in the class. So it felt like when going into it, it felt like everybody knew somebody else except me.
Now, did your classmates from your school, were they like, where are you going? What are you doing?
I think the teacher like went over that on the first day. She's like, oh, and Lexi has a second classroom she goes to once a week, which now who knows what they were thinking.
It would be like,
Lex,
okay.
Okay. She's our inclusion kid.
Yes.
Okay. But I think they figured it out eventually when they were hearing about like the field trips I was going on. And
were they jealous?
I think some of them were, but for the most part, I think most kids didn't care. I mean, when you're 9, you're in your own world, like, but once like I started getting established in this class and like learning my friends, and it got a lot less intimidating, I think. And yeah, I was still like the poor kid in this class where like I came from this background where we were all the poor kid and we all got free lunch and all of that. And it was like the kids who packed their own lunches because they made just too much to qualify for free lunch.
Right.
Those were the weird kids growing up. But then I moved to this different school and it's, oh no, you're the odd one out, which was funny because we were all the odd one out.
Right.
They were,
I
don't know, but so yeah, that was my first inkling of being, different. Which even further back there were like little things, but it was like, oh, I didn't speak until I was 4, and then I went straight to preschool, and then started kindergarten at 4 because I have a weird early September birthday, and they were like, well, we're not going to wait till you're almost 6, so we'll just send you and go for it. Which worked, I guess. I always kept up in class. I had really good grades through elementary and middle school. Like I liked school as a kid.
Right. So when you didn't speak until you were 4, did they think that you had some developmental delays?
Probably, but I don't know. And again, coming from a poor family, and in the 90s, there wasn't a lot of like watching for any of that kind of stuff, especially for girls. And
my boyfriend Rob, he did the same. He didn't speak till he was 3 or 4, and then just started speaking full sentences.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was for me. It's just full sentences. And my aunt loves talking about it. I love my aunt. She's my favorite aunt. Even when I didn't speak, everyone knew. Like, Lexi likes going to Aunt Michelle's house. And she was joking about how I went from 1 week not saying a word to the next week I was reading the back of the Cheerios box to her. And like, she thought aliens had abducted me and replaced me. Like, just instant switch. And who knows what the catalyst for that was? Maybe I just wanted to talk now, or wanted to wait till I perfected it. Who knows? Yeah. But so there was always that kind of like, oh yeah, Lexi's not quite the same as everyone, and that's fine.
Right now, yeah.
And I think our family was mostly fine with it, and it's just like, okay, we're just gonna go with the flow. And then I get around these other those weird gifted kids, and even to them, they're like, this one's a little too weird. I remember getting
the weirdest out of the weird kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and then obviously growing up in the 90s, like Harry Potter became a huge thing. And then
Mhm.
that became my personality for so many years. And then it was like, oh, she's the weird Harry Potter girl too. That kind of stuck for me for years, even into adulthood. Even now, it's like something comes up about Harry Potter news and people are like, oh, did you hear about this? And I've kind of left Harry Potter behind me. I'm not going to go on a rant about it, but
Right. I
um,
can understand. I can understand.
I think anybody who has like
And paying attention.
heard anything at all understands that like J.K. Rowling is made some statements and made a stance, and these are stances that I don't agree with and not stances that I would like to support. So I've kind of
Right.
left Harry Potter in the background, you
Sure.
know, but it still comes up because everyone knows like I was that girl, you know,
Right.
and I feel like every school had that one kid. And for my school, it was me.
Right.
Um,
You didn't like dress up during the school day as
I didn't dress up during the school day, but I definitely went to like every midnight showing and every midnight book release. And, you know, I would dress up for those. I wore my little robes and had my little
Right.
wand. And, you know, it was fun. You
Which
know,
house were you?
Oh, I was Ravenclaw.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna tell you, I ask you that. I don't know enough about it to know what that means, but I know that it's a thing. So
Yeah, well, the description of Ravenclaw is like the creatives, the witty,
Oh, okay.
and like the nerd kids. Like they're the
So-
smart house.
So that's where you'd be. That's
So
right.
they just
yeah.
threw me right there. Yeah, so I feel like I was kind of defined by a lot of that growing up. And then in high school, I did drama club for a couple years, which I feel like all the weirds tend to fall into at some point.
Whoop, whoop.
But through a couple friends in that drama club, I found debate.
Oh, yeah.
And I am a girl who loves to argue and I love being right. So debate just,
I wish I'd have done that. I think I would have been good at that.
yeah. There are a lot of different formats that are really fun there. But
Yeah.
it's like, I feel like debate was just like theater kid light for me, you know? It's like, oh yeah, theater kid, but without the spontaneous bursting into song.
Right.
But my mom always sent me and my siblings to this summer camp growing up. Sorry, I'm kind of all over the place telling this, but I
No,
feel like
that's
it's
great.
like pertinent.
No, it's great.
So I went there for 13 summers, 12 or 13 summers. And you know, that's where I kind of like, you know, summer camp's kind of where you embrace your weird, right? Like everyone wants to be the weirdest kid at summer camp. It's a goal. Right? Everyone loves the weird camp counselor who like wants to do the crazy things.
Right.
I feel like just that background really like shaped me into embracing it because I mean, even in high school, you know, I didn't have a lot of friends because that's the weird girl. But like I was okay with that.
Right.
And all my friends were like the weird kid too.
Yeah.
And we just kind of bonded.
Had your little weird posse.
Well, yeah. And it was great. You know, we sat down, we ate lunch together, barely talked, and then we went to class. It was great. It was great. But yeah, I feel like everything I've done since like adulthood is, oh yeah, this feels fun because it's kind of like summer camp.
So
like
what was the
chasing that.
summer camp that you went to?
It was a camp run through Campfire. It's on Lake Coeur d'Alene in northern Idaho. It's called Camp Swaylocken. I just went there this past summer for their 100th
So
anniversary.
you're still going.
Yeah, I guess I am still going to camp, right? And, you know, we swam in the lake and we spent the night and had fun. I stayed in my old cabin from when I was a middle schooler.
Did
That
it
was
feel
just
like, oh man, this takes me back?
yeah, a little bit. Actually, one of the staff members at the camp that summer was one of my campers from my first year on staff.
Oh, that's funny.
And it was really sweet. And he was, you know, he was an energetic 8-year-old when I had him, right? He was a really sweet kid. And, you know, as he's walking with me up this new trail that they had placed, which was not the trail that I had now, you know, they had
Right.
moved the trail. You know, he's walking me up to the new trail to the cabin and he's like, I have a question for you. I was like, all right, shoot, kid, who's like 17 now. And he goes, was I a difficult camper? And it was like, maybe if you were in someone else's hands, but we just our energy matched so much. I was like, oh yeah, you want to do something crazy? Let's do something crazy.
Well, it's being self-aware, though. That's
Yeah, and I did the counselor in training, the CIT program there growing up, or in high school. For your junior, senior year of high school, you do the counselor in training program to be a camp counselor. And we had a counselor for that program who was there to train us.
Right.
And so our leader, his name was Mr. Frodo at camp. So everyone has their camp name, right?
Of course.
You know, Mr. Frodo is going to be a fun guy.
Oh, yes.
But the best thing he taught me that I still use with kids that I'm babysitting when like you want to just pass some time for something. It's an event called squirrel fishing.
Squirrel fishing.
So you find a stick, you find some string or a rope, and you find like old bits of bread or a bagel or anything, and you give each kid a set, and you set them down in the bushes and be like, all right, wait for a squirrel to come by. And they're all giddy, but they're trying not to be too loud. And it's like really exciting. And they see a squirrel. It's like, oh, is he going to take it? Is he going to take it? And like, obviously the squirrel's always going to get away and the squirrel's going to be fine. But the kids are just loving it. And the time goes by so quick.
They don't even mind that they're sitting still while they're doing it.
Yeah, you're not doing anything, but you're waiting for a squirrel to come by. And
my partner is 56. He would totally do that.
Yeah, I would do it.
When I get home and tell him, he is going to be like, sticks in the car. Okay, let's get all of our stuff together.
Yeah, so everything is just like, will this give me the serotonin that I get from squirrel fishing? All right, let's try it. So then, I finished high school barely, I feel like that's kind of the thing for the burnt out gifted kids,
Right.
It's like, oh,
You get bored.
all right.
Yeah.
But I graduated on time, which was a miracle. And then I spent the next year or so, my best friend's dad got me a job at the local gas station.
Mm-hmm.
And so I worked there for about a year, but wasn't really doing much else. I had done a semester of community college, but I was just still burnt out and just couldn't do it at the time.
Yeah.
And and I was younger than my whole grade. So I was 17 when I graduated and couldn't do a lot of things that the other kids did, which was lucky because there was a chance that I may have entered the military if I had been old enough. So
That would
dodged
have
a
been a whole
bullet
different
there.
path. Yeah.
Thank you, Mom, for putting me in kindergarten at 4. You stopped me from a military career. So, I had a friend, one of my friends had invited me to, I would say about sophomore year this started. She invited me to these ballroom dance classes, Latin ballroom dance with a focus on salsa dancing.
So your sophomore year
Of high school, I was doing salsa dancing every Friday night.
that is not probably what your classmates were doing on Friday.
Yeah,
except for this
probably
one.
not. But especially being a kid in Spokane, growing up, there's a lot of kid-friendly activities and there's a lot of activities once you're an adult. But those teenage years, there was nothing for us,
Right.
So we would go into downtown Spokane and we would go salsa dancing at Simply Dance Studios, $5 a head every week, social salsa dancing, and then
Was
we
there
would
other
leave.
people your age?
Yeah, it was all other high schoolers, all my
So
age.
This whole group of high schoolers in the 90s were like,
So I graduated in 2009.
oh,
So this
I
was
guess, okay, that's
2007, I
even
should say was when I was good. Yeah, it's a little weird. Yeah. And then afterwards we'd walk the 3 blocks down to one of the local 24-hour diners, Satellite Diner, which they're still open. I think they just announced that they'd been open for 25 years or something.
Wow.
But we'd go down there, we'd get pancakes, and then we'd all go home. And my friend, bless her heart, we lived on opposite sides of town. She would drive me home every night.
Oh,
And I was all the way up on the north side, and she lived on the South Hill with everyone else. And she would drive me all the way home and back. And we did what we call a division trip. And we still do this now anytime I visit. So Division is the main arterial in Spokane. It's a huge street, goes all the way north to south. So we just take Division all the way up to take me home. And we would blast music and roll down the windows and
Was it
yell out the
salsa
window.
music?
No, it was just
2009, whatever.
yeah, mid 2000s
Yeah.
rap, hip hop, R&B.
You got some Gwen Stefani.
Yeah, throw some Spice Girls in there.
Right.
Outcast, Hey Ya, that was always a good one.
Oh, yeah.
Bulletproof by that one's still on the playlist. And we would just like, and we'd drive and like we'd see a random person walking down the street and we'd just be like, hey, out the window.
Because y'all were so cool like that.
Yeah, it was just ridiculous teenagers just being crazy. And finally she dropped me off at home, and then that became a tradition every week that like she would do that for me. But through that dancing classes, I met one of my best friends. His name is Alden. And like, it was kind of weird because he was one of those more popular kids, but like, still a weirdo, but like popular kind of weirdo.
Right.
But I was definitely not. And we went to different high schools, and I think that helped our friendship a lot. But he ended up moving to Portland just a year after graduation from high school. We graduated the same year, different schools. He moved down here seeking out a music career and, kind of finding himself too, that age, that 17 to 21-year-old age where you just don't know what you're doing with your life. And now I'm 31 and still don't know what I'm doing.
I will be 49 in 2 weeks, have no clue.
Happy birthday.
Thanks.
But he had moved down here, and I had visited once with the debate team, and I was one of my friends from the debate team reminded me of this later. She's like, yeah, on that trip, you told everyone you were going to move to Portland, and none of us believed you because you always say you're going to move to whatever city that we're visiting that week. And she's like, but then you did it. And the reason I did it, I still remember, I was very impulsive as a kid. So impulsive. It's just like, oh, this sounds fun. Let's do it. Which now as an adult, I realize that's probably ADHD.
Again.
Yeah. Maybe. So he texted me one day when I'm working at this gas station job, like 6 months after he had moved down. We had become friends because we both liked the same band, which was Muse. And this was before the Twilight movies had come out,
right?
Which is, I think, is when Muse really exploded for kids in our age group, which I love me some Twilight. But being the Harry Potter kid, I had to be like, oh, yeah, that's not cool. Where now I'm like, I will watch Twilight any day. Let's watch it. Let's go. But, we had both loved the band Muse. We both liked Harry Potter. Me definitely more so than him, I think. But he like tolerated it.
Right.
So, it was kind of just one of those weird friendships that just by happenstance, right?
Right.
So then, 2 years later, he moved down here. I'm, working at a gas station, and I just get a random text from him, which we do sometimes, just randomly text your best friend. And he texted me and he goes, hey, you should move to Portland. And I said, okay. He's like, cool. Can I pick you up in 2 weeks? And I said, sure. Which is never anything I would possibly do at this point in my life. But when you're 19 and working at a gas station,
what else you got to do?
Sounds fun, and I put in my 2 weeks that day, and I like started getting things ready to move and giving stuff away to friends, which now I realize they were maybe a little worried for my mental health at that point, where I'm like,
we're going to save these.
Hey, I'm leaving. Do you want all of my clothes? And then when they realized that it was because I was moving, I think they were a little bit less stressed about it. But it was very sudden for everybody, but especially me. Like I told everyone as soon as I knew. I moved down. I had no job, no housing. My first couple weeks here, I stayed with a friend of mine that I met through like an internet thread.
So you didn't even stay with your...
No, he had no room in his place.
So you had to move down here. I don't have room for you. You got to figure that out.
Yeah, he's like, figure it out, but come down. I'll give you a ride. I was like, all right. So by whatever luck the universe gave me, I made it through. And I ride on the universe's luck every day at this point. But I just ended up really lucky for me. And when I was staying with this friend, I was like, Craigslist was the place to go for housing and jobs back then.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Yeah. So I found a live-in nanny job on Craigslist.
Okay. So you're like, score.
Which I'm like,
you can live there.
This day, absolutely would never do this. Right. But again, this was 2011 at this point. So went with it, moved in, had this live-in nanny job. I worked this live-in nanny job for about a little over a year, maybe a year and a half. And I'm still really good friends with the mom I worked for. She had a 6-year-old son at the time who now he's about to graduate high school. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this kid just grew up before this kid is an insane musician. He plays guitar, he plays bass, and he's just so talented and really creative kid. And it's so cool, like seeing him like grow and sparkle in that way, you know. That kid's gonna go far for sure. But like, you know, so then like, you know, that position comes to an end. I moved in with another friend for a little while. Finally got my own apartment with a roommate. Things didn't end well there. I moved with another friend. It was just insane. But through like this back and forth of like different, and I was always working an odd job or a side hustle. I was always babysitting, nannying, or like I was doing bar trivia for a while, like hosting, because they just needed a host and I had been going long enough.
Yeah.
And I did that for a while. It's always had a side gig or something else going on just to make things work, because I didn't want to go back to Spokane and be like, oh, I failed.
Right. Now, was it a big transition? Because Spokane is kind of a small country little town.
Yeah.
You know,
Spokane is weird because like technically it's a blue city, but it's so close that like there's so many conservative like viewpoints around town, and you see them a lot. To moving to Portland, where it was just like, hey, you're you and you're not hurting anybody, go for it, you know. And yeah, I think there was a bit of that transition for me there, but I think also being 19, I wasn't as aware of it.
right.
You know, especially since my family was mostly Democrats anyway,
Yeah.
at least left leaning.
Yeah. So you weren't, it wasn't as big of a like, oh,
Yeah.
Lexi drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah. And like in high school, back when I thought I was straight, I was in like the GSA and all about the like the Westboro Baptist Church came to our high school at one point. I don't remember why, but they did.
Like were they protesting your school?
Yeah, they were protesting our school for something, but we were like out there counter protesting. And when you're 16, that seems like really cool, right?
Right.
And so, you know, I always did that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
I don't know why they were at their school, honestly. Probably because we had a GSA, but
Right.
who knows? So I know there might be maybe younger listeners. GSA is the Gay Straight Alliance. I know some schools call it like the Rainbow Alliance or just queer club or queer support or whatever they call it.
They would never have had that in my hometown.
Yeah.
They should, but they would have never.
Yeah, but I was, you know, I've always had this like very strong sense of social justice, even though if I didn't quite understand what it was or why. I was just like, hey, you're not treating these people right. Treat them better.
Right. I mean, that's just basic decency is what it is.
Yeah. And so, you know, I thought I was straight because I was like, oh yeah, I like guys. So can't be a lesbian. Definitely straight. Which now it took me until I was like 26 to be like, oh, bisexuality is an option here. Which definitely bi for sure. Maybe, who knows? Maybe that'll change. Maybe, you know, I'm 31. Gender and sexuality is...
You'll grow out of it.
They're spectrums, you know, they go back and forth. But so yeah, through another one of my roommates in this 3 or 4 year span of in and out of roommates, and I feel like everyone goes through that period in their 20s. One of those roommates found a posting for a board game night at one of the local bars. I still go to this bar. It's called My Father's Place. It's in inner Southeast Portland. It's a well-known dive bar.
I actually went there not too long ago, like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I was there like 3 nights ago. So
there was stand-up comedy there the night I went.
Yeah. So I went there. I went to this board game night. You know, met some new friends. Some of them are still friends. I would say I know like 10 or 12 people from that event that I'm still friends with.
Wow.
One of which being my husband, who when we first met, I was 21 and he was still 20. And because this event was at a bar, he had to be on the opposite side of the bar, like on the other side of this wall in like the diner area that they have during the day. And that's where he had to sit for board game night. And we had to bring board games over to him and sit and play with him. And me being me and seeing someone like excluded, I was like, oh, well, we're going to go play games with this guy. And then, you know, we became friends. He finally turned 21. And I was like, all right, buddy.
Back over to the bar.
Come on to the big kid side. And then, we knew each other for maybe 6 or 7 months. And then one day I didn't have a ride home I didn't have a car at the time. So usually I rode home with one of my roommates, but none of them had gone that night.
Mhm.
And so he offered to drive me home in his dad's truck. He's going to get so mad at me for telling this story on the air, but I'm doing it anyway because I think it's adorable. He was mortified when he found out my side of the story. So he drove me home in his dad's truck, and I leaned over the center console to give him a hug goodnight before I got out of the truck. And he kissed me.
Yeah.
I now know that he thought that I was going for a kiss, so he was just returning it. But I was just like, all right, cool. This guy likes me. I kind of like this guy. I'm going to kiss him back. So I kissed him back. I went to bed,
Right.
whatever. And then we had our first date a couple days later, and now we're married. We've been married. This year marks 10 years together.
Wow.
Yeah. So, love you, Colin. I'm sorry for mortifying you. I think it
could have been so much worse.
Yeah,
could have been
after we were engaged, when he found out that I didn't kiss him first, he was convinced that I had kissed him first, but he had kissed me first. But yeah, so I met,
And now, a word from our sponsor, me. What does having a background in senior healthcare have to do with being a mortgage broker? More than you think. When I was in senior healthcare, it was my job to sit down with families and discuss personal, private information, discuss options, look for solutions, and help the senior and their loved ones through the transition. I spent years and years doing that. Today, I kind of do the same thing. Buying a home can be intimidating, scary. You have to feel comfortable disclosing very personal details, especially about income and debt. And you have to feel a sense of trust. Even though the business itself is transactional, the relationship with me is not. I feel that it's very important to build that trust and comfort with my clients. It means that I might be looking at their situation on the weekend or evenings, that I'll be doing problem solving with them, and that I'll be holding their hand throughout the whole process. At the end of the day, this should be a very relational experience. I'm so happy to help you walk through it. To talk to me about a mortgage in Oregon or Washington, contact me at Christine@tworiversmtg.com. That's CHRISTINE@TWORIVERSMTG.com, or call me at 903-343-1370 in MLS 224-8608. And now back to your program.
I started dating Colin. About a year into our relationship, he started through one of his friends. This is where we're getting into the topic of this podcast.
Right.
Through a friend of his, he found out about this pinball charity called Pinball Outreach Project. And they were looking for volunteers just to run their pinball arcade for kids during the day. The kids got 2 hours of free play every day. And then after that, it was $5 a day, unlimited pinball for kids.
Sure. Just a way to keep kids
occupied
and off the streets, or
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, just give kids a positive outlet, something to do. And once you start learning the rules of pinball, you learn how to improve as a player. So a lot of the kids that came through there were improving as players too. So they were building these skills.
There's rules.
Yes, every pinball machine has new rules and steps. So when you walk up to a pinball machine,
I thought it was just tick, 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 as fast as you can. Tick, 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 tick.
Yeah, so that's part of it sometimes. But when you walk up to the pinball machine, if you look on the lower left, there's a little index card, and it'll basically tell you the main shots that you want to go for. But it's on some machines, you want to shoot for the ramp, or you want to shoot the drop targets, or you want to collect something. And it's such an interesting game because it's that combination of you are physically pushing a button and hitting a physical stainless steel ball around a physical wood play field, hitting pizza plastic to collect digital points.
Right.
And it's for your digital video game.
Uh-huh.
It's a weird kind of combination, but I love it. And the combination of physics
physical.
Yeah, it's great. But so he started volunteering there, and a couple of years later, I joined him and started volunteering there. And that's when I started learning how to play pinball because I was the same as you. I was just like, yeah, you go and you flip the flippers and you hit the things and you have a good time, right?
Right.
And he's like, yeah, sort of. But there's more. And then I found out about pinball tournaments and pinball leagues. And
So tournaments, I mean, so you just play in whatever points you collect goes like on a board or something? Because you don't play with other people.
so yes and no.
Okay.
So
I'm learning so much about pinball.
So you can make a pinball game multiplayer just like any other game in the arcade.
Okay.
So when you press that start button, if you have more than one credit, you can press the start button again and add the second player or the third or the fourth.
Had no idea. You can
Pinball
have
is
4 people?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then pinball is 3 balls. So player 1 will play ball 1, and then it'll be player 2's turn to play ball 1. So everyone plays their ball 1.
Kind of like bowling.
Yep. And then you go back and you ball 2 and then ball 3. And there's different formats for pinball tournaments, right? So eventually I got into hosting pinball tournaments. So the format that I like to do for my events, because I like getting new people into pinball, I'm always trying to get more people to come play with me and more people to figure it out, which you should definitely come to a tournament.
Oh, well, I'm going to have to now.
Yeah, for sure. You'll see my posts on Facebook all the time.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
So the tournaments I like to do are just simple 3-strike head-to-head knockouts. So what that means, you're assigned to one opponent per round, and every time you play in a tournament, they assign your machine. You don't pick your machine for most tournaments.
Does it matter which machine you're on?
Yeah, because they have different rules. And if you're familiar with one, you're probably better at it than one that you're not familiar with, you know? So
kind of throw you off your game.
Yeah. So there is beginner's luck, though. Every time I'm like, it's my first time playing a game in a tournament, I tend to do pretty well. So there is that too. And I think a lot of it is not knowing what you're doing. So you're just going for everything and seeing what works.
Right.
So these tournaments happen. I do the 3-strike knockouts. If you lose, you get a strike. And then after 3 strikes, you're out of the tournament. Done.
Mm-hmm.
Easy. I feel like it's very easy to understand for new players. Seasoned players know what they're doing. They know, it's great. But then there's also tournaments that have 4-player setups. And those are typical match plays. And your score matters in that whoever gets the highest score on the machine gets first place on that machine. And then they'll give you points based on that. So it'll be, first place gets 7 points. Second place gets 5 points. Third place gets 3 and fourth place gets 1. And then after a set of matches, which they usually do 5 rounds, the people with the highest points based on that system. So like after 5 rounds, the maximum points you could have is 35. So then they take the top set of players and then they go to finals and then they play for usually cash prizes. There's a full sanctioned system. Like there's world rankings. It's insane, but I definitely fell down that rabbit hole early and now I'm into this stuff. So this past year, I barely qualified for the women's state championship for Oregon. This was the first year that they did official. IFPA is the International Flipper Pinball Association.
Okay.
It's big. It's the NFL of pinball.
Right. Wear jerseys.
We should do that. But they're the ones that sanction the events and check the rankings and put all the rankings out. So I qualified for the 16-woman event at seed 14. So I just barely made it in, right?
Oh, yeah.
But I did, which was great. That was a great event. That was this past January. So for 2022, for the women's championships, it ended up in January 2023. And I took second place in that tournament, and it was insane. And it was all day, and I was tired and hungry and upset and didn't want to be there. I was not feeling well that day. I was just super anxious. I almost stepped out of the tournament, but my friend was like, nope, we're going to go to the tournament. You're going to go and we're going to have a great time. And so we went to the tournament and she was actually my opponent in the final round. We both made it to finals together. So that was my friend Brenna who did that. And the format for the finals was a best of 7. And we went to game 7 and we both had 3 points. We both had beat each other 3 times and it came down to that final game. And I picked the game because I had lost the last round.
Right.
So I picked Captain Fantastic, which is an older game. It's an Elton John theme.
Of course.
It's great. I was like, okay, I've won on this game all day.
Right.
I just need to win on it one more time. But then, I feel like all the pressure got to me and everything. And I was like, this was my mistake here. In these championships, they give you a 30-second warm up every game, every round, if you want it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, I'm going to skip my warm up. So I just went in and played it. And I should have just warmed up just to like calm myself down a bit and just get in the zone. But I didn't. And that had worked for me throughout the most of the night, but it was fine. Brenna beat my score on her last ball. So I did make her play everything.
Right.
I held my own. And she ended up taking the championship. And I'm so proud of her. She is an excellent player, even better human being. She's fantastic. So it was really cool seeing like one of my best friends win the tournament.
Even if it was against you.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't like, obviously I love competition, but like, I don't believe that competition has to overshadow community. Right. Like I can be competitive with someone and still be so proud of them and so happy that they win. And I think everybody can. And I feel like more people should embrace that.
Well, the competition should be with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not with like, you're the enemy. I have to defeat you. It's to, I'm going to play the very best I can.
And I did not play my best that round. And she did not play her best that round either. She definitely could have wiped out my score. However, what she did do was better than what I did. And that is not her fault.
Right.
She played better than me. And that's the end.
So you must have, doing this as much as you do, hosting and everything else, there must be a strong pinball community.
Yes. So we're going to backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
So all the way through 2019, Pittsburgh was actually the city for pinball.
Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
Okay.
And every year they had a big convention called Replay FX. It was just a gaming convention, a charity convention that included the world's largest pinball tournament. It was 1,000-player tournament.
Oh my goodness.
And it was like multi-day. And that tournament was called Pinburgh.
Okay.
And the competition to get tickets for that tournament was insane. And in 2019, when tickets went on sale, I was there and I was ready. And I got my tickets had been checked out after I think they were up on sale for a minute. Right. I'd gone through the checkout screen and I was on the wait list already.
Mm-hmm.
But I was high up on the wait list. I was within 100 players.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're within that close to it, you're probably going to have a pretty good chance of getting to go because people cancel, they get sick, they can't go.
Yeah.
They can't afford it. Whatever reason that they can't go to this event in the following year, those slots open up and then you move up the wait list. So I knew, okay, I'm high enough on the wait list. If I just fly out, I'll get to play in this tournament.
Right.
However, that tournament was scheduled for summer 2020.
So nobody played that tournament.
So we all know what happened there. It got postponed to 2021. Before the 2021 event, just a couple of months before it was supposed to happen, they announced that they were actually permanently ending the convention.
Oh, forever.
They just couldn't afford to keep it going after COVID, unfortunately. And so what happened there is all of these, there's a Pennsylvania pinball organization. I don't know what the acronym stands for off the top of my head, but it's PAPA or PAPA.
Okay.
And they were headquartered in Pittsburgh. And because Pinburgh was no longer happening, they sold off a bunch of their machines to people throughout the country.
Sure.
And because of that happening, Portland now has more pinball machines than any other city in the United States.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
So Portland is the place for pinball.
And strip clubs. Who knew?
Yeah. Pinball and strip clubs. Go hand in hand.
And weed stores.
Yeah.
That's Portland in a nutshell.
Yeah. Good city if you have if you have any vices like strippers or weed or pinball.
We got you covered.
Yeah. So in Portland, we have the Portland Pinball League, which is a non-sanctioned pinball team league. So You can have up to 10 players on your team. You play against other teams. Everyone has their home bar. So you're the home team or the away team. And you go, away team picks their games first in a doubles round. So it's 2 players versus 2 players. And that one you add up your team's scores on the 4-player game. And whoever has the highest wins that round. It gets 2 points for their team. And then it goes to singles where the home team picks their games. Then it's head to head. Whoever wins gets 1 point for their team. And then it's just back and forth. It's just away picks doubles, home picks singles, away picks singles, and away picks doubles, or home picks doubles. And then at the end of the night, you've had a potential 16 points.
Right.
If you have 9 or more, you win.
Right.
So then there's that league. I'm the captain of my team. We're based out of Ground Control Arcade where I work.
Right.
So
you spend a lot of time there.
Yes, I spend a lot of time in Ground Control. And there's another Ground Control team. They were there first. Their team started with a bunch of players who played a lot of the fighting games at Ground Control. So they named their team GKO.
Okay.
Which is like TKO when you're playing like a boxing game or anything like that. So we were trying to come up with a fun name for our team. I was like, oh, GK. And then like, being a 90s kid, I had an N64.
Right.
I played Donkey Kong 64 so much. And on that game, there's the Donkey Kong rap.
Yeah.
And there's a part where it goes, huh, DK, Donkey Kong. And so I'm with my friends and I just go, GK, Donkey Kong. And then we're just laughing and we're like, you know what? We're going to do this because, you know, my boss and my best friend, a bunch of my coworkers are on GKO and they're like the serious team. Like everyone wants to try to beat them because they're a pretty well-skilled team.
Sure.
And, you know, I was like, yeah, we're going to be Donkey Kong. And we are. We're great. We're Donkey Kong now. So I'm the captain of Donkey Kong. And I keep joking anytime someone asks what GKO stands for. Now I tell them that it stands for Donkey Kong Originals. And my friend hates it. My friend Dylan, he's the promotionals manager at Ground Control. He hates it, but like in a friendly way. We have this friendship of gentle ribbing all the time. But
so when you have new people come in and they're curious about, you know, do they just start out as being like players that come into Ground Control and then they come in more often, and then they start to see that there is leagues and all of that and they start getting interested? Is that kind of how people progress? Yeah,
I would say that's pretty common. And it's not just in our bar. Sometimes, you know, like my father's place, the bar I mentioned before, they have a room that has about, I would say maybe 10 pinball machines in it at the bar. So, you know, someone goes there for a drink and they're like, oh, there's a pinball machine there. I'm going to throw 50 cents in. I'm going to play a game. Oh, this person on this machine has this huge high score. I'm going to try to beat it. How do I beat the score? And then it just kind of gets into, you know, the same way someone falls into being
gambling and stuff.
Not quite gambling because there is skill. Actually, the history of pinball is very, very interesting in that for a couple decades, pinball was outlawed because it was considered gambling. There's a bunch of pinball machines at the bottom of the Hudson River because the mayor of New York hated pinball and demanded they be destroyed.
Hated the river. So
yeah, I guess. So, I mean, this was like Prohibition era. Like, it was insane. But then there's a movie coming out this year called Pinball. And it's all about Roger Sharp, who I think it's his sons that founded the IFPA. He saved pinball. He went in front of, I think it was New York State Congress. And he called his shots on a pinball machine and hit every single one to prove that it is a game of skill and not gambling.
If there's not a drunk history on this,
there needs to be. I'll go on it. I'll be the person. There's a graphic novel about it. It's great. So pinball was outlawed for years because people considered it to be gambling.
Right.
But it really is a game of skill. You
don't win money, though. So not like in that sense, you know. Yeah. It doesn't like shoot out coins.
So that was the thing is the oldest version of pinball machines, kids could win a stick of gum.
Oh, heaven forbid.
Yeah. So then it was gambling because you're playing for a prize.
Right, right.
It's so.
What the hell did they think claw machines were?
Yeah. Who knows? But so that's kind of the history. So now, like, pinball came back. It dipped for a while in the mid 90s, until Pat Lawler, who is my favorite pinball designer. I love almost every game he's put out. He designed the Addams Family pinball machine,
Okay.
which to this day is the best-selling pinball machine of all time. And it saved the pinball industry. It got people back into pinball in the 90s.
Was it the theme or was it the game itself?
I think it was a little bit of both because obviously Addams Family was huge, and this game was based off the live action movie.
Sure.
And so people were familiar with the theme.
Yeah.
And then he has this skill of using toys and mechanics to make the game feel whimsical.
Okay.
Where it's like you shoot the ball in one hole and it pops out another side of the game, and you have to be ready to catch it. And it's just, there's moving parts.
Surprises.
There's a box with thing, and he comes out and the hand comes out and picks up your ball and locks it for the multi-ball. And there's the electric chair that you need to shoot in to start your modes. It's just, there's so many different moving parts to it that it's magical to play, right?
Right.
And I think even just for a beginner player, they're like, wow, this game is crazy. It's on so many people's like favorite games list. It's definitely on my top 10, probably my top 5, but I've played so many pinball machines now that I love all of them. But we have one at Ground Control, and if anyone's playing a pinball machine, that's usually the first one they're playing. So we get people in, a new person comes in, they're just getting into pinball, and then they just meet the people, right? If you're coming to a place where there's pinball, you will find someone from the pinball community within a couple hours for sure. And then you meet them, and then somebody's going to mention it, right? And then at Ground Control, we have this big projector, and it has all of our upcoming events that it like cycles through them as like advertisements, basically.
Sure.
And people will see, oh, pinball tournament this upcoming week, let's go. And I host a women's pinball tournament too, so that comes up. So then we get a lot of new women playing. And then I'm like, oh, by the way, there's an open tournament too, if you want to bring your friends who don't want to play in a women's tournament or who don't qualify to play in a women's tournament, bring them to the open tournament. Let's go. And my women's tournaments, I run them as inclusive events. So non-binary players are welcome to come.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, obviously trans women are more than welcome in a women's tournament. It's if you feel that event is for you and you're comfortable being listed in the women's ranking system, you're more than welcome to play. I'm not the gender police. Come on, we're going to play pinball.
Right.
Respect that this is a safe place for women.
Yeah.
And we're going to play. And
that's awesome.
I've had zero issues with it. Every player that's come through has been so kind, compassionate, supportive. It's been really cool to see players like me and my friend Brenna, who is the current state champion for women. She's coming and playing in these tournaments, and we're playing with people who have never played in a tournament in their lives. And everybody is having a good time. And those are the kind of events that I love running.
Not a lot of Karens in the pinball world.
Well, I'm not going to name names. With every community, once it hits a certain size, there's always going to be drama somewhere.
Of course.
I try to stay out of it. That's my stance on it, is we're here to play pinball. Let's have fun. Set it aside for 10 minutes, And I think everyone's pretty respectful of that. Like, everyone's going to have their interpersonal issues.
Sure.
Lots of drama in the pinball world. But all of us were regularly getting beat by a 12-year-old who is now about to turn 21. So,
right.
And that's the thing, is a lot of these tournaments are at bars.
Yeah.
So he can't come and play in those tournaments. But that kid's going to be 21 this upcoming May. And he's going to kick all of our butts again. And we're just going to have to deal with it.
Wow.
And I kind of put that in perspective for people. I'm like, yeah, you're acting all serious now, and you're acting like this is so dramatic. But remember, this 21-year-old kid is about to come in and kick all our butts. So
he's just been waiting. He's been counting down the days.
He's actually such a really humble kid. I love him. I call him a kid.
He's a kid,
he's an adult now. He's about to turn 21, but he was 12 when I met him. Right. So he's 12. He's 12 forever in my mind. I remember the first time I beat him too. I was so excited. He was probably like 15 at the time. And I was just like, I beat you, Colin. His name is Colin Urban. He's well known in the pinball world. But I'm just like, I beat you, Colin. I ran a tournament last night. He's off at college right now. And it was in a bar, so he couldn't play anyway. But his parents came out and they've been coming to tournaments for years. So I got to, talk to them, catch up a little bit. It's great. Especially post-COVID, we're just seeing a lot of people come back.
Right.
So it's people that I haven't seen in 3 or 4 years. My friend's wife was pregnant at the end of 2019 and she had a baby early 2020. And I got to see a photo of him at like one tournament and then the world shut down.
Yeah.
And now he has a full toddler who's about to turn 3.
He'll be playing before you know it.
It's insane. Yeah, and he does play. They own a couple machines at home. So he,
That's funny.
his little toddler plays. He's still got some skills to build.
Right,
Flip
right.
one flipper at a time. Watch where the ball's going, but nudge. But he's 3. So right now it's just flipping and having fun.
You're supposed to flip them one at a time?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Again,
don't worry. I'll take you out. We'll have to
I'm just like, yeah, I'll have to.
We'll have to do a sequel, a follow-up
Definitely.
video of me teaching pinball. I
That's
love
what I had to
it.
do is I had to record myself at these different events that I'm going to and just be
Yeah.
like, hey, this is.
Yeah, it'll be fun. We'll add a vlog to the podcast.
Yes,
A
yes.
TikTok page.
Yes.
I love TikTok. I'm obsessed.
Awesome. Well, we'll talk about the TikTok event they're having in this space
Oh,
coming up.
quite.
Yeah.
I am ready for that.
Yes. So that'll be a whole big TikTok
Yeah.
thing. I'm still trying to navigate. I know how to do TikToks. It's the one thing I'm timid about. And I don't know why I'm not timid about anything, but I'm timid about filming myself do a TikTok. Who knows
Oh,
why?
yeah. Well, just remember it's
Nobody
about
cares.
a minute long
Yeah.
and someone's just going to scroll. And then they're
No.
done.
That's it. That's what I do. And yet it still is paralyzing. I don't know why.
Just put the videos out into the universe. It's a blast.
So what do you have planned as far as events coming up?
There's a few events that I'm really excited for. I talked about I run our women's event. That is the first Wednesday of every month. It's our flip tournament. Stands for Fantastic Ladies in Pinball.
Sure, it's like Glow in
Yeah.
wrestling.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, so there must be a lot of women who are doing this then.
Yeah. So IFPA just created the women's division a couple years ago. Then COVID hit and everything shut down for a
Sure.
while. But now we're doing like women's state championships. And next year, hopefully, it'll move on to women's nationals. There is a women's world tournament. And that's just, you don't have to qualify for that through your state. It's just they take the top qualified women in the country and send them their invite and send them on. But yeah, so I run the women's event. The second Monday of every month, I run an open 3-strike tournament. So that format I explained earlier with the head-to-head, assign you to a machine, assign you to an opponent, go play, tell me who wins. I love running those. Next month, I'm really excited. March 8th is International Women's Day.
Oh,
So I went through all of the credits on all of the pinball machines at Ground Control where I work. So it's a lot easier to host events at a place where you work there.
right,
So
right.
not trying to show bias to Ground Control, but I'm showing a little bias here.
Right.
And so I found about, I think, 12 machines on the list that had women on the design team. So now I'm breaking down that list and we're going to run a tournament that highlights women in pinball design. And each game is going to have a card on the backer for each woman on the design team and what they did for that game. So people can learn and kind of know, oh, wow, really? This woman worked on this game and this game. I love both of these games. Oh, wow, this woman did the artwork here. I know friends with a tattoo of that artwork. And that was a woman on the design team in the 90s who did that, and it's just.
It's so weird because I never gave any thought to there are designers of pinball games and, oh, there was controversy with pinball. I mean, that's very fascinating.
But you think, video games are still in the tech industry,
Right,
so it's
right.
still a very male-dominated industry.
yeah.
So, highlighting the women who contributed to this has become a big deal for me.
No, I
It's
think
like-
that's fantastic.
It's so fun. And I'm learning new things every time, like, with pinball being banned and all of that stuff. And just what went into creating the hobby that I enjoy today, right? And different inventions throughout time that have created the modern pinball machine, right? Like now games have magnets under the playfield that'll catch your ball and throw it in a different direction and all sorts of things that you're like, wait, what? Electric shock. Like, it's literally just a shock through a coil that makes that flipper go up every time.
Right.
It's just that little electric signal. But the original pinball machines didn't have electricity. They were pachinko machines. You
Yeah.
just pull and let the ball fall, and that's how you want, and watching them grow. And like now the newest pinball machines have little LCD screens on them, and that's where your score is. And they can
Right,
show
right.
video clips. And so like at Ground Control, we have a Guardians of the Galaxy machine. So when you hit certain shots, it'll show a little clip from the movie.
Oh.
And same with we have the Godzilla pinball machine. It does that. We have an Iron Maiden machine. So like it shows like animations of like things from, I guess, Iron Maiden albums. I'm not as
Right.
familiar with the band, but like I love the game. So yeah, it's where like before that it was the dot matrix displays where it was like those little red dots, which most of the pinball machines we know were probably from that era, like the 90s, early
Right.
2000s. And you could see a little video happen on those screens, but it wasn't quite, it wasn't an actual TV screen in
Right.
there. And then, before that we have the solid state machines, which are like, oh, the numbers are digital. That's cool. But then before that, it's the electrical mechanical, where it's like you get the spinner reels for the
Right.
scores. Like, and it's just like you go back and back and back. And you're like, wow, this thing has evolved. And what's going to be next?
Yeah. I mean, there's no telling.
They're talking about virtual pinball and,
well, I'm sure that we have a VR set. I'm sure that
yeah.
I mean,
We're
and
gonna
they
get
can
there.
do crazy things with those. I mean,
Mhm.
the program that I used, Supernatural, which is like
Mhm.
an exercise program. I mean, when you hit balls with the bats, I mean, you feel it.
Yeah.
So there probably will be,
Yeah.
if there's
something
not
to bring
already, I'm sure
you.
there is. I
Yeah.
don't.
And I know Stern, who is like the biggest pinball manufacturer these days, they released Stern Insider a couple of years ago. So now you can log in with a QR code to these machines and you can track your stats
Wow.
and like go for certain achievements. It's like, oh, can you destroy the building 5 times in Godzilla in one game? Oh, you're going to get a little achievement for that. It's like Xbox Live achievements, and
Yeah.
me always chasing that dopamine. I'm like, yes, I'm going to go for this. And so at Ground Control, we have leaderboards for all the games. So you can see like where you are with everyone else for that month on that game. And oh, what's his high score? Oh, I can beat that. I'm going to go and play that game some more. And, oh, I love the history of pinball, but you just get me into a tournament and I'm there for the day.
Yeah.
I don't care if I lose right in the beginning. I'm gonna sit there and watch. I'm gonna watch the finals. All of these people have become my friends now,
Yeah,
So I'm like, yeah, oh, my friend's still playing. I'm gonna watch the end.
Gotta go support. Yeah.
Or, oh, this player that I don't know, but I have heard of is playing in the finals. I want to see what his strategy on this game is, things like that. And next month, I'm also going to a tournament in California.
Okay.
It's a memorial tournament. Lyman Sheets Jr. was a very well-known pinball coder. Unfortunately, he took his own life last year. So we're doing a fundraiser tournament for some mental health organizations.
Oh, wow.
In California, which my friend Greg, who ran Portland Outreach Project, Pinball Outreach Project.
Oh, so there's okay.
Greg, who ran POP, which is Pinball Outreach Project, which is how I got into pinball.
Right.
He now lives in California, and he worked at Williams Pinball in the 90s, so he knew Lyman Sheets, who was this coder. So he ran this tournament last year that I went to, and I'm going to go again this year. But it's just a memorial tournament for Lyman Sheets. And last year I met some of his old coworkers, and I heard really cool stories about what it was like working for these companies in the 90s. Because I know the games that came out, and I know the names, but I don't know anything about the behind the scenes. So it gave me that really interesting behind the scenes information. And now I get to go and like maybe hear more stories, but also like support a really good cause.
Oh, for sure.
And I got to see Greg. He's really cool. Everyone in Portland knows Greg. And he's done a lot for Pinball Outreach Project. At Pop is where I found my favorite pinball machine. First time I'd ever played it. It's called Stars. Because I know this question always comes up. What's your favorite machine?
Yeah.
Stars. It's a Stern machine. It came out in 1979. I might be off by a year or two, but late 70s. And the whole theme is collecting stars. So you roll over a part of the playfield that has like a little button on it. And if the ball hits that button, one of the stars lights up. And if you collect all 5 stars, or there's little stand-up targets on the side that you can hit to collect the stars. Once you have all the stars, you shoot for the spinner, and then the spinner is worth more points the more stars you've collected. So then you can hear it. And it still has physical bells and chimes on the inside. So when you
Right.
spin, it's going ding, 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 ding. And it's like such a beautiful game. And I love it. And they had one at Pop, and I put up the high score on that one.
Oh, yeah.
And he told me that the high score is still there. They moved it out of Pop. One of the other things that Pinball Outreach Project does, other than they did close their headquarters in Portland. They're no longer like based anywhere. But they still bring pinball machines to like places like hospitals and children's hospitals where kids are going to be there for a long time. And then the kids have something to do, you know.
Yeah.
So my pinball machine is currently at one of those children's hospitals, but I still have the high score. So come on, kids, do a little better.
No, I think that's awesome. Wow. I mean, what
Yeah,
a
there's so much.
crazy.
Yeah. Pinball can do a lot of good in the world.
So I'm going to have to make sure, and I know he will, but Brooks, who's his episode is coming out this week. I was just on his Basement Buddies podcast,
Oh,
and he didn't know about you coming on, but he was talking about how he hates pinball.
not for long.
But he will listen to this because he's good about listening to my episodes. And he might have a little bit better appreciation for pinball. I definitely do.
There's
Who
a
knew?
lot. There's so much. And I still consider myself a very average player. Like, if you look at my rankings compared to the people who play the same amount of tournaments as I do, I'm right in the middle almost every time, like smack dab in the middle. So I actually have a t-shirt that I bought online that says World's Okayest Pinballer. It's my favorite shirt, but now it's kind of worn out. I got to get a new one.
You didn't
but-
even have to have that special made. That was
No,
that
it was on
already
some
that you could-
pinball merch website. One of them. I want to say it was Double Danger, which every pinball merch site I love, like their name is like some pinball team. So,
Yeah.
you know, on a pinball machine, you might tilt, right? But
sure.
first it'll give you a danger. Most of them give you 3 warnings. It's danger, double danger, and then tilt.
Right.
So, you know, naming your pinball company Double Danger. I kind of love that. My friend owns a women's run pinball merch shop, and it has more like feminine designs and stuff. And that's called Soft Plunge, because when you pull the plunger on the pinball machine, you can pull it
Right.
soft or hard, and Soft Plunge Pinball. And there's, you know, the #1 Twitch streamer for pinball is called Dead Flip, which is like, it's a technique in you let the ball bounce off your flipper to the other flipper, and then you flip. So it's a dead flip. You're letting it bounce without
Okay.
actually flipping.
Okay.
So like everyone's named after some like niche thing in pinball, and I kind of love that too. There's just so many cute things about pinball. And just
Now, isn't it loud in there?
sometimes, yeah. For many of my tournaments, I would wear like noise isolating earmuffs, not headphones, because I didn't like the music playing. I'd like to know what was around me. So I wore these like earmuffs, like you would see workers wear on like a construction site. It's just like ear protection, and it helps like isolate that noise. I now have a pair of AirPods Pro that work really well for me. But you'll see a lot of players wearing earbuds or headphones or something to block out the noise. But some players like to we call it raw dogging it, where they just go and let the sounds happen around them and just go. But for me and my sensory issues, I need something to isolate it where I still know where everyone is. Because if you touch me and I'm not expecting it, I'm going to lose that ball.
Right.
But if I know that I might get bumped and I'm aware of it,
Yeah.
I'll be fine, you know? But yeah, it can get loud, especially, you know, if you're running a 100-person tournament or whatever.
I
you
can't
know.
even imagine.
It's
Because they're not quiet machines. I mean, that's kind
Yeah.
of their thing, is to bing, 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 you know. Like,
Yeah, and you know, a lot of the newer ones they're mostly digital sounds and have a volume control, so you can just turn it down. But yeah, especially in an arcade, you're expecting to hear the pew pews
Oh,
of
yeah,
everything
yeah.
around you. So
And I'm sure for a lot of people that are especially like that
Mhm.
kind of competitive, they enjoy that. It's
yeah,
a satisfying.
yeah. And if you're playing a machine, you know, the sounds can definitely help you. Like, you know, sometimes games will play a little sound effect when the ball's coming back down, so you know to like be ready to flip it,
Right.
or if sometimes they do what's called a call out, which you get a voice actor and they say, shoot the right ramp or whatever, which speaking of voice acting in pinball, another fun fact, there's a pinball machine from 1998. It's called Medieval Madness.
Okay.
You're trying to destroy castles and rule the kingdom, right?
Sure.
But there's 2 ramps, and the right ramp is the damsel ramp. And if you hit it enough times, you get to save the damsel from the dragon. And of course, there's a voice actress for that, and the damsel's voice is Tina Fey.
Shut up.
Yeah, so Tina Fey is a voice on a pinball machine, and to this day, I don't know how that happened because it's from well before she was like super well known.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tina Fey is a voice actress on the Medieval Madness pinball machine.
Oh my God. How funny.
Yeah, and I'm just like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, of all the actresses you could have named, I mean, that would not even
Never
hit my-
thought of
no.
it. But yeah, I'm excited to see what new themes come out. If we get more, like you'll see celebrities getting into pinball here and there, especially with Stern. They're such a big company now.
Mm-hmm.
They'll do their celebrity partnerships, and you'll see it on their Instagram, or they'll go to an event. And I think they had Ozzy Osbourne signing at their booth at an event recently. It's like,
Sure.
okay, so are you announcing like, an Ozzy Osbourne pinball machine coming out? Like, what's
Right.
happening here? So that's the current rumors. Because why would he be? But it's also like pinball has this history of people seeing it as like seedy or grungy,
Right.
So it's like
Rock and roll.
Yeah, all these
Yeah.
rock and roll stars are like yeah, like we have a Kiss pinball machine, we have an AC/DC pinball machine, we have an
Sure.
Aerosmith pinball machine.
Mhm.
Like we have all of those games already. So all
You
these
don't
rock
see
and
very
roll
many
stars.
like Keith Urban pinball.
No, I don't think we have any country music pinball machines. Maybe that's the niche. Give me the Chicks pinball machine. I'd play that. Taylor Swift pinball. I'm here for it. Like, let's do it. I think all of it comes down to like licensing and rights and IPs. But I personally really like those unique themes that aren't based on.
Right. It's not pop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So there's one that we have at Ground Control that was designed by Pat Lawler, my favorite
Mhm.
pinball designer.
Mhm.
It's called Dialed In. And it's just like you run this like city where like everything is like high tech or whatever. And you're trying to save it from random disasters. And it's fun, but it's also like a unique theme as opposed to, Godzilla pinball, which I
Right.
love. I love Godzilla pinball. Do not get me wrong. Twilight Zone pinball. I love Twilight Zone. Iron Maiden, but like those are like well-known IPs as
Right,
opposed to
right.
just, or like another big machine that we have is Attack from Mars, which is its own unique theme where it's like, oh yeah, it's alien invasion, but it's not like an actual like brand.
Right. Now there was a Attack from Mars movie.
That's Mars Attacks.
You might be right.
Not the same movie, although I
Yeah,
do
I
love that
know.
movie. You can tell that like they definitely took some jokes here and
Yeah.
there. It's like, I'm like, oh, that's really niche. I like that. And it's when pinball machines have Easter eggs. So like this is the thing with Williams machines. Almost every game has a cow in it somewhere. Just for
That's
fun.
just his thing, is like cows.
Yeah, it's like, well, Williams was the company, so I don't know if it was company wide or just with this like team of people. But on Attack from Mars, when you hit a shot, the saucer comes down and it abducts a cow and comes down, abducts the cow and flies away. And then
Mhm.
you get Medieval Madness. And if you hit the catapult, you flip at the right time to get a certain thing like launched at the castle or whatever. And one of the options on there is the cow. It's just, they pop up. And then Keith Elwin is a pinball player who now designs pinball machines for Stern. And in his Jurassic Park game, there's goats. There's a goat multi-ball.
Sure.
And in Godzilla, when you hit one of the shots, there's a very small chance that the video scene will just be a goat rotating, like he's like the head henchman or something. He's like on this rotating chair and he just spins and looks at you. And to me, that's the biggest achievement in the game. If I get the goat, I don't care what my score is. I won. So it's just funny seeing these like Easter eggs in pinball machines. You're like, who came up with that? Why is that there? But it's fun. And it's just like any other video game. There's the Konami code. Up, down, down, left, right, up, down, left, right, BA, start, select. A lot of games from the 80s and 90s, if you put in this code or a portion of it, it'll give you something special or fun. And it used to be like, sometimes you get an extra life or whatever you want. It's just these cheat codes that you learn. And pinball machines will have those too, like flipper codes. Like before you hit start, if you hit the flippers in a certain sequence, they'll have something for you. And it's just like, okay, I'll
But how
watch
does
that.
like the general population know that?
They don't. It's all
So you gotta
Easter
be
eggs. It's little secret codes.
hmm.
And I remember playing games on consoles in the 90s as a kid. And if you knew the cheat codes, you could get all sorts of stuff. And I played The Sims. If you had a Sims cheat code, I think that might be your common trend on all of your guests. Ask them if they played The Sims.
Okay.
I bet you they all did. I think that's a thing. Like people who played The Sims are just a different breed of people.
But I have not.
You should play The Sims.
So I need to play pinball. I need to play The Sims.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things I need to do.
Yeah. So anybody who ever wants to talk to me about pinball, please feel free to do so.
You definitely have a passion for it. There is no doubt. Who knew? No, this is I mean, it's completely eye-opening. I mean, I thought it was funny that there was a women's competitive pinball tournament. That's the least interesting thing you said out of all of this. And it was still very interesting. But of all of those things that, I mean, it would have never even occurred to me. None of that stuff that you even brought up has been anything I would have ever given a thought to. And I've been in an arcade and played pinball. It's been a long, long time. When I go in and do it now, I will definitely have, I will be looking at it completely different.
Yeah. And I've only been competitive for like 6, 7 years now. There are people who've been playing competitively for 15 years or since I was a kid, and there's so much, and there's always something you can learn from somebody about something. And they're like, oh, did you know that if you hit this shot and then this shot, this happens? No, I've been playing this game for 3 years and I did not know that. Or one thing that helps me win on a lot of games that apparently people don't know is some games let you collect items that you can use, right? Like on Monster Bash, which is one of my favorite games. It'll let you collect an item for each monster. So like say I'm playing Dracula mode. If I have a garlic clove, I can hit the plunge button and it'll give me a shot on Dracula without me actually having to hit the shot. So it'll give me the points for it and say that I did it, even though I didn't. And I won on that because, my ball was reading and I hit that and it let me finish the mode. It gave me however many million more points. And I won because of it, because the other player didn't know that they could use their items that way, So it's every single person you play with will give you something new that you can learn and better and improve yourself. And I love that. And I love the community that comes around pinball. There's Twitch streams for it, like I mentioned before. Like I've watched Dead Flip streams for the last 5 years or so. And now he's designing pinball machines for the same company. But you're sitting there watching someone play pinball and then you just post in the chat, oh, what was that? And then he can either explain it or someone else in the chat can explain it. And it's such a community of like just sharing our knowledge to help everyone just improve and do better and have more fun as players. And I just love all of that.
What a positive thing, and I've mentioned this before in some of my interviews, but one of the things, talk about common threads is a lot of weird people, weird organizations, weird out there. I mean, they're giving back.
Yeah.
With different organizations, they build communities of like-minded people.
Yeah.
And I mean, and all of these things are so positive. And I think that we need to encourage that positivity more and see this weird for what it is. I mean, it's fun, it could be silly, it could be, way more interesting than I ever would have thought. But builds that community. That's so cool.
Yeah. And I'm a big supporter of what I call found family.
Oh, yeah. Me too.
You find your family and those are people who you're going to stick with for the rest of your life. And like, I can't say a single negative thing about anyone that I've met in the pinball community. They're all so great for their own unique reasons. We have a well-known author or like really successful author who plays pinball with us. We have a lot of people who work in the tech industry for tech companies. one of our players does what's called bike polo, where you play polo but on bikes. I don't
Oh.
quite understand it, but like that's his thing. You know, everyone is such an interesting person. If you sit down for 10 minutes and just talk to them,
I might need his number.
you learn so much. I'll hit him up and be like, "Hey, you want to be on this podcast? Talk about bike polo." You know, there's so many people that do so many things. There's a former competitive swimmer, and he like collects quilts, and he's part of the pinball community. And there's just so many people that have so many different backgrounds, but then they just like found pinball and got into it, and it's great. Like,
That's so funny.
and then you get to learn about all of these people and their backgrounds. And my really, really good friend Sean, you know, he works at Nike, and you know, he owns pinball machines at his house, and you know, so it's like I can go over there
you
and play
can,
pinball
you
with
work
him
at
and
Nike. Yeah.
can like chat with him. And yeah, and he's great. But, you know, I get to know his kids, and you know, one of his kids is getting to the age where they're about to graduate high school, and then the other one is like still in elementary school. And you know, I used to come over and read bedtime stories to the younger one, and he named my car.
Maybe squirrel hunting and
Yeah,
or
squirrel fishing. Yeah,
Squirrel fishing.
gotta go squirrel fishing. Definitely, that should be a pinball thing. That's what I'm gonna send an email. Be like, all right, here's your theme, or like make it a mode, like a video mode on a game, just squirrel fishing multi-ball or something.
We're gonna be reaching out to drunk history.
Squirrel fishing is the way to go. But yeah, it's, you know, these you get to learn so much more about people through this community. And I think this can happen in any community, but I feel like pinball just really fosters this like acceptance, because it's like, oh yeah, we're all already in this weird hobby.
Yeah.
Let's talk more. Like, what do you do? And you know, I have a friend that's an engineer, and you know, another friend that works like, I don't know what he does. He works in a lab and does science things, and I too big for my brain.
Those
You know,
sciencey
it's like,
things.
everyone's so much cooler than me, but also like they don't act like they're cooler than me type people, you know. And
Right.
you get a lot of people in
Because
the
everybody's
service
on the
industry.
same
Yeah.
playing ground at that minute. Literally
Yeah.
playing ground
At that point, we're both going to be playing Star Wars pinball. So I hope you're into Star Wars pinball, because otherwise you're not going to have a good time. It's, you know, you take people from all these different walks of life, and then we're just going to sit here and we're going to push a couple buttons and hit a ball around and leave, you know, and that's it. And it feels great.
Wow. Well, I think this is really cool. I think that I'm going to start paying a little bit more attention to these kind of things. I'm going to come check out pinball again with this new information, because it has sparked an interest.
And now every time I travel too, I use this app. It's called Pinball Map. It has all of the publicly available
It's like
pinball
the weed
machines.
map.
Yeah.
You know?
It's all the publicly available pinball machines near you. It'll tell you what the location is and what games they have. And you can just go and play. So like right next to where I parked my car, there's a Godzilla machine in there, and I'm going to go and I'm going to play, and then I'm going to go home. Like, I already know. Like, it's a bug. You catch the bug.
Oh man, who knew?
Yeah.
Who even knew? Well, this is very cool. I'm going to have links where they can follow you and see where your tournaments are. And
Yeah, absolutely.
they definitely need to come and check these out and look at this in a whole new light.
Yeah, I'm really accessible on all social media, especially if you tag me on like Twitter. I'll see that pretty quickly and I'll respond. I'm an open book. I'm totally happy to talk about pinball to anybody who's interested.
It's way more interesting than I would have ever even. I thought it was an interesting concept. It's way more interesting than I would have even thought.
It's deep. And I feel like I just touched the surface on a lot of
your
these
passion
things.
for it. That's another thing. I mean, it kind of draws you into that. That's so funny. But no, I love it. And maybe this will spark a whole new group of potential pinballers. And
absolutely. Coming to Ground Control Arcade. I work the door on Friday nights, typically taking covers. So if you're over 21, you can see me there.
Yeah.
Be like, hey, I heard you on the podcast. I'll be like, that's cool. Hi, I'm a weirdo in real life.
Here's me in real life.
Yeah. Here's what I look like.
Well, this is a video. They'll know that.
Yeah,
anyway.
they will see the video too. I've been listening to it on Apple Podcasts. That's where I listen to podcasts in my car. I listen to podcasts when I drive. So,
well, this is way cool. Thank you so much for being here. This was, super fun.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I had a blast. So I got to talk about football for over an hour. So.
Right. Like you don't do that in your, day to day.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, Lexi. Well, we'll give everybody all the information and thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
I do these shows because I'm wanting to follow the journey of people who found their true, authentic selves. But today I was a little blown away about how interesting I found the facts and history of pinball. Who knew? Not only does it make me want to learn more about the games, like their designers or Easter eggs and the sordid history of it all, but also gives me a desire to play and learn more about the fun of the game. Who knows? Maybe one day I'll be on a league. Thank you so much to Lexi Whittemore for talking to us today and sharing her enthusiasm of pinball. Look for links on where to follow Lexi in the description below. Also, thank you for our sponsor, Christine Lassiter of Two Rivers Mortgage. To email or contact Christine for the mortgage in Oregon or Washington, you know what to do. And be sure to like, subscribe, and share this podcast so more people can find out how I'm finding my own weird.